Good evening. It's the 1950s in America. It's late at night. A radio's playing in the car, and a couple are driving late into the night. It's a cold night. Let's begin our story. Patricia and Larry were both very tired, as they had been driving for hours to get to their destination, which was in another state. Patricia took out her thermos and poured Larry some coffee to wake him up, as his eyes were closing due to the tiredness, and there was not a motel in sight. Larry took a few sips of the coffee, and when he was just about to give the cup back to Patricia, there was a loud bang. The car suddenly started to slow down, and Larry knew straight away that he had a flat tire. He pulled the car over to the side of the road and got out. His front tire was now flat, and he was furious. He took off his hat and threw it on the ground, shouting. Patricia came out of the car and tried to calm Larry down. He had no spare tire, and even if he did, he didn't know how to change it. They both looked at each other and were thinking what they were going to do in the middle of the night in an old town. Larry told Patricia that they were very close to the destination, which was the next town, and even if they walked it, it would take them an hour to do so. Patricia did not like the idea of walking in the middle of the night at all. Larry looked around, and all the lights of the houses were off. It was very late into the night. Patricia turned around and looked to see if they could find anyone who could help them. And then Patricia saw a light in the distance of a house. It was a very tiny house, but there was light coming from the living room. Larry looked at the car's wheels with his torch and saw a nail had punctured one of the tires. They both knew that they were stuck and had no other option but to grab their coats and head towards this house. They both put their coats on and started walking. When they got to the house, they could see someone moving around in the living room, which was a sign of relief for them that somebody was awake. They knocked at the door and knocked again. A few minutes later, the door opened, and there was an old lady. She was short and had a walking stick. She asked them in a very fragile voice how could she help them. They told her that their car had a flat tire and needed to call for help, and if they could use her phone. She told them that it was absolutely fine and they could come inside. They walked into a very old, dimly lit house, which clearly have not been cleaned for a very long time. Larry went over to the phone as Patricia stood near the main door, smiling at the old lady, and she was smiling back at her. Larry picked up the phone and tried calling his friend in the next town, who they have driven all this way to visit, but there was no tone. The phone was dead. Larry told the old lady, holding the phone, that your phone does not work and it's dead. She told him she is really sorry and forgot all about it. She told him they should not worry at all, and they will eventually find someone to fix their tire in this town. She told the couple that she had just finished making dinner and they should stay for dinner. They looked at each other and thought they had no other option apart from sitting in the car with the freezing temperature outside, or sit in a warm house and have some hot food. Larry told the old lady that they would love to stay for dinner if it won't be too much of a hassle, and the old lady told him not to be silly and to help her bring the dishes and the food to the table. They all sat down at the table, and the old lady poured some hot soup and bread to the couple, followed by the main dish. She then asked what they were doing in this part of the country, and Larry explained that his friend's relative had passed away and they were visiting his friend for the funeral tomorrow, which was in the next town. When the dinner finished, the old lady told the couple that it was very late into the night and that she was very tired. She told them that they should stay for the night as she had a spare room, and they told the lady that was not necessary and they would go back to the car and sleep there for the night. But she insisted, and they decided to stay the night in the spare room. She took out some old duvet pillows from the cupboard and passed it to them. She then closed the door behind her, and the couple went to sleep. Patricia and Larry went to sleep fast, and it was late into the night when Patricia suddenly woke up from a noise, and standing beside her bed was the old lady, just standing still and smiling at her. Her eyes were wide open, and she was just staring at Patricia. Patricia nearly screamed, and just before she did, the old lady whispered to Patricia that she did not mean to scare her, and she had just brought some water in case they needed to drink it in the middle of the night. She left the water on the table next to the bed and left. After that, Patricia felt very uneasy and couldn't go back to sleep. She picked her head up slightly from the duvet and saw two shoe shadows standing right in front of their door, not moving, just standing there. Being extremely scared, not knowing when, but Patricia went to sleep. Larry woke up the next morning, and Patricia was still in bed fast asleep, probably due to her experience last night. He looked around the house for the old lady, but she was nowhere to be seen. Larry then woke Patricia up, and she told him, rubbing her eyes, what she had experienced last night. She told him that she did not want to wake him up as he had been driving for hours and was in a deep sleep. They both left the house, leaving a thank you note for the old woman. Larry found a mechanic by walking a short distance from the house, who came to fix the tire, and they were on their way to the next town to attend the funeral. When they got to the funeral, Larry greeted his friend, whose relative had passed, and both paid their respects. Larry and Patricia then both walked towards the coffin, and when they did, their faces went pale. It was the same old lady from night before, who had sheltered them, lying in the coffin. Larry could not believe what he was looking at, and was too scared and embarrassed to say anything, as he found it too disrespectful to mention anything like that at the funeral. They sat down among the others, and two ladies behind them mentioned that the old lady used to be a loving part of the community, but in the months leading up to her death, she became very short-tempered, and her personality completely changed. She used to scream at the neighbors and became a completely different person. She used to stand at her window, just staring out, and then suddenly died. The funeral ended, and the couple got into their car, still trying to take it all in. Larry started the car and went past the old lady's house on the way back, even though Patricia begged him not to go that way. He wanted to see if he could see the light on again, but it was off. Larry stopped the car and wanted to go inside the house. Patricia held his arms and begged him to just get out of this cursed place. Larry had one foot out, but got back in and sped off. They were driving, and Patricia started to talk about how the two ladies were mentioning that the old lady changed from being so kind and nice to becoming really evil just before she passed away. She asked Larry if he thought she became possessed by something sinister, something really evil. As Patricia spoke, Larry started to feel a cold chill at the back of his neck. He turned to Patricia, and his eyes opened up completely with extreme fear. It was not Patricia who was sitting next to him. It was a dark, hideous-looking demon sitting next to him. A dark figure staring back at him, talking to him in a manly voice. Larry lost control of the car and ended up crashing into a tree. His head was on the steering wheel, barely clinging to life. The demon crawled up to his seat on all fours and whispered into his ears the following.
I am the evil you met last night. I am the evil who used to live in that house of the old lady. I used to stand behind her when she was sitting down. I used to stand behind her when she ate her food. I used to sleep next to her when she would go to bed. I used to crawl into her bed and whisper things into her ears until until she became insane. I was the one who drove her to insanity. And one night, when she went to bed, I crawled up beside her, woke her up by scratching her ever so slightly on her forehead, and she saw my real image and died that night when she saw me. You both came knocking at my door. I took the form of the old lady and invited you both in. I then stood by your bedside while you both slept. Your wife saw me that night, and I had to kill her too. And I took her form. I was the one who went to the funeral with you. You can never tell anyone about this, Larry. I will leave you here to die as I go back to the house and wait for my next guest. I will lay nails on the road, as I did for you both.